After 5 years AWOL, my heartbroken return to the mansion reveals a secret that shocked my boss. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick, heavy with unspoken words. I stood at the gates of the mansion, my heart thundering in my chest. 5 years away, and yet, the memories flooded back. Each brick, each window whispered tales of anguish and regret. The sun dipped low, casting eerie shadows, as if the house itself was alive, watching me. I hadn't wanted to return. I thought I could leave the past behind. But life has a way of dragging you back. My fingers trembled as I pushed the gate open. It screeched, a haunting sound that sent shivers down my spine. My breath hitched, memories crashing over me like a tidal wave. I remembered laughter, but now, all that echoed was silence and pain. Where was my family? Where was the love I once felt? My parents had been distant, locked in their battles, and I had retreated into myself. 5 years of self-imposed exile. Today, I sought a resolution to confront the demons that haunted me. I stepped inside, the air colder than I remembered. The walls felt like tombstones to lost dreams. My heart raced as the musty scent of neglect filled my nostrils. I wandered through the rooms, each step bringing back visions of past joy twisted into sorrow. The grand piano sat silent in the corner, like an old friend abandoned. I could almost hear the notes, the beautiful melodies that once resonated through these halls, now nothing but a haunting echo in my mind. I stumbled into the library, dust motes dancing in the fading light. The once vibrant books looked forlorn, cloaked in neglect. My fingers brushed the spines, but it was the faint whisper of a loose page that caught my attention. I pulled it free. It was a letter, my father's handwriting. My stomach knotted as I began to read. Secrets spilled from the page like a rushing river, betrayals, hidden truths, and unresolved choices. Each word twisted my heart, tightening the painful grip of uncertainty. What had happened here? What were they hiding? My mind reeled, but before I could think further, I heard footsteps. They were heavy, purposeful. Panic surged through me. Who was here? I pressed myself against the wall, my breath shallow, muffled. Then I saw her. The housekeeper, Ms. Agnes, her face a labyrinth of worry and surprise. She paused, eyes wide, before her lips formed a silent gasp. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Not now, not ever." I felt the weight of her words. It was more than a warning. It was fear. For me? For the home I thought I knew? My heart raced, a relentless drum echoing in my ears. What did she know? As she turned to leave, the air crackled with tension. I shouted, "Wait!" My voice broke the spell of silence. "What are you hiding? What happened to my family?" But she vanished into the shadows, leaving me standing there with the crumpled letter in hand and 1,000 questions swirling like a storm. Would I ever learn the truth? Would the secret shatter everything I thought I knew? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The hallway stretched before me, an unwelcome labyrinth of memories. With each slow breath, the weight of the letter pressed heavier against my chest. What could Ms. Agnes know? Why was she so terrified of the truth? The walls seemed to close in, their whispers growing louder, echoing the questions that throbbed through my mind. It felt like the mansion itself was both a sanctuary and a prison. I clutched the letter, its paper fraying between my fingers, and suddenly, I could bear it no longer. I needed to find answers. I emerged from the library, the world beyond dim and uncertain. The living room stood before me, its grandeur dampened by time and neglect. I needed to shake off the years I'd spent running away and reclaim my place in their story. But where to begin? Just as hopelessness began to creep in, I spotted a framed photograph on the mantel. A family portrait from years ago, each face beaming with joy. My heart cracked open, a small ember of identity flickering inside me. It was a twisted reminder of the love that once filled the mansion, and yet, it felt foreign now. The warmth had withered, replaced by an icy void. Why had I stayed away from this place for so long when it was still a part of me? Then, without warning, I heard a soft voice calling my name. It was a voice I hadn't heard in years. My heart stopped as I turned to see the outline of my younger brother, Samuel, stepping cautiously into the living room. His eyes were filled with a mix of apprehension and relief, emotions I shared. We had been so close before everything fell apart, and it felt surreal to see him again amidst the ruins of our past. Is it really you?" he asked, his voice trembling as though he were afraid I'd vanish again. "I thought I'd never see you here again. I didn't mean to disappear," I stammered, the rush of emotions clawing at my throat. "So much has happened. I don't even know where to start." He stepped closer, a hesitant smile breaking through the tension. "I'm glad you're back. There's so much we need to talk about." But before he could continue, the shadows of our childhood crept upon us. "You should know that things have changed since you left." "What do you mean?" I felt a knot of dread forming. I had no interest in hearing about more loss. The shroud of uncertainty around Samuel tightened as he scratched at the back of his neck, glancing around the room as if he expected someone to overhear. "It's about Mom and Dad. They're not the same anymore. There's more hurt, more secrets." "What kind of secrets?" I pressed, my heart racing again. The thought of my parents spiraling deeper into their struggles twisted a knife in my heart. "I don't know how to say this, but I heard them arguing about you. Like your absence was the catalyst for everything that went wrong. They blame each other, but they also blame themselves." My stomach sank. Guilt washed over me, dragging me down like a weight I couldn't shake off. I had run away, thinking I'd escape the turmoil, but maybe I was part of it. I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought maybe they'd be okay without me. "Maybe they would have been," Samuel said quietly, his gaze dropping to the floor. "But now, I don't think they even know how to be okay anymore without each other." The silence fell between us, thick and suffocating. The mansion suddenly felt too large, too echoing. I could hardly absorb what he was saying, the shadows of our childhood flitting across the walls, the laughter, the love now eclipsed by uncertainty. What kind of repairs could we ever make to a crumbling foundation? Before I could respond, a distant crash reverberated through the house. A moment of shocked silence hung in the air, then more footsteps pounded down the hallway, frantic and heated. Samuel's eyes widened in fear. "They're home. We have to hide." "Hide?" My heart raced as I instinctively ducked behind the sofa, Samuel slipping in beside me, our breaths mingling with the dust of years gone by. The front door swung open with dramatic flair, voices rising and crashing against the once stately walls. "What do you mean you can't find it? It's not like it just disappeared." My father's voice boomed, followed closely by the apoplectic rant of my mother. I clenched my fists, the familiar cadence of their quarrel sending shivers down my spine. As their argument escalated, a revelation pierced through the chaos. Somewhere in the depths of this turmoil, buried amongst the animosity and regret, lay the key to the secrets that had haunted us all. Maybe they had answers to the letter's revelations. But the fragile bond one felt with Samuel wouldn't hold if the truth tore our family apart even more. Just as I began to consider my next move, there was a sudden bang, silencing their voices. "Enough!" boomed my mother, cutting through the tension like glass. "This family is unraveling, and if you are both too blind to see it." The weight of her words hung in the air as I exchanged a worried glance with Samuel. I could feel the cold prickle of dread creeping up my spine. If this was the way it would unfold, what belonged in the light? My pulse thundered in my ears because it felt like we were on the cusp of revelation, a defining moment veering dangerously close to catastrophe. In that instant, a door creaked somewhere deep within the house, piquing my curiosity. I turned to Samuel and whispered, "What if they have hidden the truth in there?" He nodded slowly, voice barely above a whisper. "What if it's darker than we imagined? What if we open a door we can't close?" The question loomed, and my heart raced with possibility, the urge to uncover the truth pulling me forward, even as a forbidding shadow stretched across the threshold of our family's legacy. Would the pursuit of knowledge ignite a fire that could finally heal us, or merely throw gas on a smoldering conflict that may never end? As we snuck out from behind the sofa, I caught a glimpse of my father's furious expression reflected in the hallway mirror. The reality of our family's unraveling loomed large. Somewhere within this mansion, I sensed answers, those that could bring either light or destruction. But as we crept silently toward the unknown, I was left with one burning question: were the secrets worth risking everything? The air thickened with tension as Samuel and I exchanged furtive glances, each realizing at that moment how precarious our situation had become. Our parents were unraveling before our very eyes, but behind the confrontations lay a mystery we simply couldn't ignore. "Ready?" Samuel whispered, as if the simple word could haunch the tidal wave of emotion swirling within me. I nodded, my resolve hardening. We stepped lightly down the hallway, our footsteps muffled against the worn carpet, the past whispering in the corners that we not disturb. We reached the door that had creaked behind us a moment ago, its surface aged with scratches and tales of years gone by, a threshold between our troubled present and the concealed past. I placed my hand against the cool, wooden panel, feeling the pulse of history beneath my fingertips. A quiet strength surged through me. If we were to find answers to the confusion that enveloped us, we would have to step boldly into the shadows. On three, Samuel murmured, his voice barely a breath against the simmering atmosphere. 1, 2, 3. The moment the door swung open, the pungent smell of dust and neglect filled our nostrils. A small office unfolded before us, lined with dark wood shelving filled haphazardly with books and disheveled papers. The faded light streaming through cracked windows threw eerie shapes across the walls, shadows dancing like forgotten memories. "Where do we even start?" Samuel asked, his forehead knit in concentration. "Maybe look for anything that relates to Mom and Dad?" I suggested, my heart pounding against my ribs as I crossed the threshold. I motioned toward a stack of papers spilling from a box on the desk. "Let's see what's in here." As we sifted through the clutter, I caught sight of an old journal half buried beneath a pile of yellowing paperwork. Its leather cover was cracked and peeling, and it felt tantalizingly significant. With trembling hands, I pulled it free, brushing off the dust with eagerness. "Do you think it's Dad's?" Samuel asked, peering over my shoulder. "I don't know," I replied, flipping it open to the first page. My breath caught in my throat. The familiar, cursive handwriting sprawled across the page like a whispered secret, saying the things we wished we could voice aloud but never dared. It was undoubtedly my father's. "I can't believe you found that." Samuel's voice was barely above a whisper, emotion swirling in his eyes as I scanned the written words, fragments of thoughts, dreams, and fears, like pieces of a puzzle yearning for a resolution. It was a chronicle of hardships, moments of despair, and the turbulent love he felt for my mother. It was raw and revealing. Then something caught my eye. A passage written in a frantic scrawl stood out starkly from the rest. "She would leave with the boys if only I could provide the truth. The letter will change everything. It can't fall into her hands." I felt a chill run down my spine. What letter was he referring to? What truth could have driven a wedge between them, leading to the discord that had consumed our family? Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the silence, jolting us from our moment of discovery. The raised voices from the living room had crescendoed into violent thundering. Our parents were spiraling beyond control, and an undeniable fear gnawed at my insides. I couldn't bear the thought of them tearing each other apart any further. "Let's go back," Samuel urged, his eyes wide with alarm. But I hesitated, my heart yearning to linger a moment longer with those unspoken words, to delve deeper into the unraveling threads of our family's tapestry. And yet, the thought of what lay above was equally distressing. We were about to turn and leave when I noticed a small, battered envelope tucked within the pages of the journal. My heart raced as I gently extracted it, feeling the weight of its significance. No return address, just my father's name scrawled, as if a lifeline dangled from a precipice within the literature of our family's mystery. "We have to see what's inside," I whispered with determination, the envelope cradled between my hands. "This could be what we've been searching for." With hesitant fingers, I began to tear open its fragile edge. As the paper split, a sudden sound rang out from the living room, an anguished scream, raw and laden with despair. It pierced through the air, a haunting echo that curled around my heart. I froze, the anticipation morphing into dread. What was that? Samuel's voice trembled, mirroring the fear that washed over me. I locked eyes with him, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the walls of the mansion close around us in a cruel embrace. Whatever we discovered in that envelope could be the stark contrast between salvation or complete ruin, yet our curiosity pulled us forward. In that moment, the echo of a shattering family was poised at the precipice of a revelation, and we were teetering on the brink of understanding, the last glimmer of hope mixed with the agony of a truth that could very well tear us apart. As I held the envelope, torn between the past and uncertainty, I felt the weight of our family's secrets press down upon me. What lay inside could awaken demons best left undisturbed or pave a way to long-lost healing. My pulse pounded like a war drum, a reminder that answers held power. What we would do with them, however, remained a question still unanswered. The stillness that followed that anguished scream was deafening. Samuel and I exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Fear danced in the corners of our eyes, but somewhere beneath it all was a spark of curiosity that threatened to blaze. I felt as if I were standing on a tightrope stretched over an abyss, and one wrong move could spell disaster. Should we check it out? Samuel asked, taking a step back, his voice uncertain. I weighed the envelope in my hand, contemplating the fragile nature of our reality. We have to. Without waiting for any protests, I clutched the envelope tighter and turned toward the dark hallway, my heart racing as I made my way back to the cacophony. The sound of raised voices and the occasional thud echoed ominously, mingling with the memories of laughter and moments of familial comfort that used to echo in this house. As I approached the living room, the scene unfolded before me like a nightmare. My mother stood at the center, her face pale and streaked with tears, her hands trembling at her sides as she fought against the mounting tide of anger. My father's back was to me, shoulders tense, his frustration palpable. The air crackled with an intensity that felt almost tangible, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath to witness, to confess, to judge. Why can't you just admit that you were wrong? Mother's voice trembled, a mixture of pain and fury. Wrong? You think I was wrong? Father shot back, his voice a thunderclap that echoed throughout the room. You know what's at stake. If you knew the truth, you would understand. The words resonated painfully in my chest, igniting a sense of betrayal deep within me. Whatever truth he spoke of was clearly a heavy burden that wove itself into the fabric of our family's unraveling. I could feel Samuel's presence beside me, solid and reassuring, even as my heart raced. A flash of movement caught my eye as my mother turned suddenly, catching sight of us. You two shouldn't be here, she implored, fear etched into her features. Go back. Now. But I was rooted to the spot, a silent witness in a storm I couldn't escape. My father turned slowly, his face a mask of pain and pleading. Stay out of this. You don't know what you're getting into, we need to know. I shouted back, anger fueling my courage. We deserve to know the truth, whatever it is. At that, they both froze, as if my declaration had frozen time itself. My father's gaze fell to the ground, a storm of emotions raging behind his lowered lashes. My mother's expression shifted from fear to a flicker of hope, as if she was contemplating allowing us into her world of turmoil. Please, let us help, Samuel added softly, his voice breaking the tension. A gentle counterweight, drawing our parents' attention to us like a faint beacon in the fog. The air hung heavy with unsaid words, a wall of silence surrounding us until my father let out a shaking breath, gazing into my eyes as though seeking solace. There are things you don't understand, things I never wanted for you to carry. Secrets that could change everything. As the weight of his words crashed around us, my fingers instinctively tightened around the envelope, longing to rip it open to confront whatever haunted our family, whatever overcame our lives to transform us into this fractured group of estranged souls. Just as my mother opened her mouth to speak, a thunderous crash erupted from the room next door, rattling the walls and shaking the very ground we stood upon. We jumped, instinctively huddling closer together as fear shot through us all. The reverberation of the chaos threw our confrontation into the farthest recesses of our minds, and it felt as if the universe had conspired to divert our attention. The basement. My mother blurted out, shock replacing the tension. We have to see what's happening down there." In an instant, the gravity of the moment shifted, urging us toward the unknown, toward a deeper layer of the secrets we craved to uncover. My heart seized at the thought. Whatever laid in our basement was beyond the whispers of adulthood. It loomed as a testament to our family's sins and struggles. "Get the flashlight," my father commanded, snapping into action. "This is important. We need to understand what's down there before it's too late." Our parents' demeanor had transformed. It was no longer a battle of words but a common rallying cry against something far more sinister, something hiding in the shadows beneath our once cherished home. I gripped the envelope tightly, resolute in my decision to face whatever horrors awaited us while praying that maybe, just maybe, understanding would lead to reconciliation. As we descended into the basement, anxiety coiling through my stomach, I felt Samuel's hand brush against my own. It was a simple gesture, but one that lent strength, an affirmation that we were not traversing this treacherous path alone. With shaky breaths and hearts pounding in sync, we emerged in the dim light of the basement, the air thick with dampness and a lingering scent of aged wood. Shadows flickered, and there, in the far corner, a glimmer of light illuminated a suspicious shape. Then, I heard Ida's soft whisper that cut through the silence, barely audible but chilling in its intent. "They never should have found it." My breath caught in my throat as I glanced at Samuel. The uncertainty loomed larger than ever, tightening around us like a noose even as the truth we sought lay tantalizingly close. The revelation about what awaited us below and the secrets hidden in that envelope swirled in my mind, whispering promises of answers drenched in fear. But was it too late? As another crash reverberated through the floorboards above, we understood that the storm was far from over. The basement stretched before us like a gaping mouth ready to swallow the remnants of our innocence. I hesitated, bracing myself against the cold, concrete wall. The words mingling with dust and darkness echoed in my mind. "They never should have found it." The voice trembled, carrying with it an air of foreboding that set my nerves alight. Samuel's presence beside me flickered like the lone bulb sputtering overhead, casting ghostly shadows that danced anxiously at our feet. My mother edged forward, the beam of the flashlight illuminating her face, which wore an expression torn between determination and dread. "Stay close," she instructed, her command both tender and firm, something that reminded me of the many times she had held my hand through my childhood fears. It was a spark of normalcy amid the chaos, one I clung to like a lifeline. "Mom?" I looked up at her, heart pounding. "What are we going to find down here?" "I don't know," she whispered, a soft tremor in her voice. "But I need you to trust me." A shiver traveled down my spine as I nodded, when Samuel grasped my hand tighter, grounding me against the tide of uncertainty. Together, we followed my parents deeper into the shadows, each step immersing us further into the heart of our family's long-held secrets. The whispered words seemed to coil around us, echoing off the damp walls, urging us closer to the source of the unseen horror. My father's flashlight flickered, illuminating what looked like an old trunk weathered, locked, and steeped in mystery. It stood like a tomb, daring us to approach. A potent aura surrounded it, and fear intermingled with an irresistible pull that drew me closer. "Dad, what's in there?" I whispered, the hushed tone unable to disguise the tremor in my voice. "We'll find out," he said, shifting toward the trunk and crouching down, searching for a way to pry it open. My heart raced, the world around us faded, leaving only the sound of the hurried thump of our heartbeats and the quickening hush of the whispers. "No. We can't," my mother gasped, instinctively reaching out to stop him. "We don't know the consequences. If you open that," sorrow flickered behind her eyes, a shadow of something unsaid swirling in the silence between us. Would uncovering this truth embolden or open Pandora's box? I felt the familiar knot of fear tightening in my gut, sensing we stood at the edge of a chasm. The secrets within could either heal us or tear us further apart. But as I looked into my father's determined gaze, one filled with defiance and regret, a heartbreaking realization dawned upon me. This was not just about unveiling the past or saving our family, it was about confronting the ghost that had haunted each of us individually, each carrying burdens too heavy to share. How could we assist him when it felt like we were at the brink of being crushed by a shared sorrow we had only begun to understand? "Think about this carefully," I urged softly, my voice breaking slightly. "What if it's worse than we imagine?" Samuel's fingers curled more tightly around mine, adding his silent strength to my words. Whatever it is, we'll face it together, he murmured, his sincerity washing over me like warm sunlight breaking through the clouds, momentarily pushing aside the shadows. With a heavy sigh, my father pulled back, conflicted. You're right. But we can't ignore the truth anymore. This has been festering too long. Before I could respond, the ground beneath us trembled, a low rumble that resonated like thunder through the foundation of the house. Dust fell from the rafters, a palpable omen. My mother shrieked, stepping back instinctively, a look of sheer terror on her face. We need to go now. As she stepped back, her foot brushed against the trunk, and I swore I saw not just fear but a flicker of recognition pass through her eyes, as if the trunk was a portal to an agonizing memory. The moment hung heavy with implications that my heart raced to grasp but my mind battled to comprehend. Mom, wait. I reached out, desperate to hear what she might say, to understand the weight of this moment. But the ground rattled again, a warning cry, urging us to leave this nightmare behind. We can't. My father bellowed, his voice filled with urgency. We need to confront what's here. It's not just about us anymore. The tension reached its peak, and I felt the air thickening around us as if charged by unspoken words and unshed tears. I knew we were on the precipice of something unimaginable, secrets that could tear apart the thin veil of our family. Suddenly, the whispers intensified, swirling around us like an eerie chorus. They're too late. I stepped back as realization crashed like a wave. The words bore the heaviness of inevitability, weaving themselves into my consciousness, a grim warning that we may have already crossed the point of no return. Just then, the sound of footsteps above us echoed through the floorboards, increasing in urgency. Panic surged through me. If we were not alone? Everyone upstairs. My father ordered, urgency propelling him toward the stairwell as my mother's face blanched. We'll figure this out later. It's not safe. We turned to flee, but I hesitated, the envelope heavy in my pocket. The truth I battled against lay with the trunk, calling out to us as the specters of our history taunted us from the shadows. As we ascended hurriedly toward the light filtering through the top of the stairs, a cold gust blew past me, chilling my bones, and I realized I wasn't just fleeing from the unknown but from the echoes of my past, knowing deep down that everything we thought we knew was just a fragment of a much larger, darker truth waiting to shatter our world yet again. And just as I reached the final step, a deafening crash erupted from below, shaking the very bones of the house, and I knew instinctively something was about to break free. The wooden floor creaked ominously beneath our hurried steps, each groan resonating within my chest like the beating of a war drum. Every flickering shadow in the corners of the hallway seemed to whisper my name, a desperate call from all that was left unsaid. I pushed a lock of hair behind my ear, focusing on the promise of light spilling from the door at the top of the staircase, trying to block out the haunting reality that lingered just below us. Once we crossed the threshold, the familiar warmth of the living room surrounded us, contrasting sharply with the dread that had been our companion just moments before. It felt surreal, almost like stepping back out of a different life. Except I was acutely aware that there was no hiding from the storm brewing within the confines of our home. Mom, what was in there? I asked, unable to suppress the curiosity that clawed at my throat like a ravenous beast. My eyes darted towards her, hoping for answers, but all I found was a glimmer of fear mirrored in her gaze. We can't talk about this now, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, quaking under an invisible burden. Not here. I opened my mouth to protest, but my father's stern look silenced me. Your mother's right, he conceded, his expression hardening with resolve. We need to get out of the house. To pack and leave. This is too dangerous. Leave? The word tasted bitter on my tongue. How could we abandon the fight? How could we escape the truth that felt poised to swallow us whole? I'm not running away, I challenged, conviction lacing my voice as I clenched my fists. The tension in the room thickened, wrapping around us like fog. Samuel stepped forward, softening the weight of my defiance with quiet understanding. Maybe, just maybe, we should get away for a while. To regroup. This was unexpected. His eyes flitted toward the staircase as if the shadows there might offer answers. Unexpected? You mean like being haunted by our own past? My retort sliced the air, and the silence that following felt like an echo reverberating through the very remnants of our home, a reminder that our lives had shifted, irrevocably altered. My mother's sorrow reflected in her eyes, the weight of her secrets continuing to pull her down. But in that moment, something shifted, a break in the armor of despair that encased our family. "You're right, Emma," she finally said, her voice wavering. "But we need to be smart. We can store these memories away for now. There are things in this house that we need to keep buried for your own good." But I started, yet the resolve in her voice shut me down. There was a gentleness beneath her plea, an undeniable love that yearned to protect even if it meant lying to shield us from ourselves. Yet behind her words lay a deeper fear, one that sent tremors of dread through my spine. Then came a knock at the door, sharp and unsettling. My heart lurched, echoing the sudden tension that gripped the room. "Who could that be?" my father whispered. "It's probably just the wind," my mother said, her unease evident. But I noticed how her hands shook as she fidgeted with the collar of her shirt, betraying the calm facade she wore. "Or someone else wanting in," I pressed, the ominous feeling contractions deep within me. As my father hesitated, caught between the need for caution and the instinct to protect us, I took a step toward the entrance. "I'll check," I declared, trying to steady my racing heart as I approached the door. "It's not worth the risk," he barked, panic edging his tone. But curiosity outweighed fear. I needed clarification, I craved to understand what awaited us in the depths of our family secrets. With a deep breath, I turned the knob and cracked the door open just a hair, my senses prickling as a chill slipped through. There stood a figure, silhouetted against the fading daylight, shadowy and uncertain. I squinted, trying to recognize the face that seemed to hover just beyond the threshold. And then, all the air rushed from my lungs as recognition crashed over me like a tidal wave. "Mrs. Adler?" I gasped. Outside stood my former neighbor. The enigmatic matriarch with eyes that seemed to know everything about our family. Her countenance was far from the old warm smile I remembered. This time, it was encased in solemnity and something else urgency. "I am so sorry for the intrusion," she said, voice laced with an unfamiliar nervousness. "But you need to listen to me. There's something we need to discuss, something about the trunk." Just as she spoke the last word, the ground trembled again beneath us, this time the entire house shivering in response, shaking our very core. As the walls around us groaned and the shadows grew darker, a realization gripped me fiercely. The answers we sought might unravel not only our lives but pull every thread we had left as a family. And in that moment, as I looked back at my parents behind me, I knew that the decisions we made next could either unite us or drive the final nail into our family's fragile existence. The unanswered questions loomed larger than ever, overshadowed by the inescapable truth. The reckoning was on the horizon, and there was no turning back now. The air inside the living room turned thick, pregnant with unspoken fears and unresolved tensions. As I stood framed in the doorway, staring into the troubled gaze of Mrs. Adler, the weight of her visit felt almost tangible. "Please, just come inside," I urged, trying to shatter the moment's tension. She stepped forward, hesitance replaced by an urgency that gnawed at my insides. The door creaked as I closed it behind her, cutting us off from the world outside, from the safety of distance. "Emma, maybe we should," my father started, but Mrs. Adler raised her hand, silencing him. "Not now, not with all of this," she said, glancing over her shoulder as if the very walls were eavesdropping. "You have to understand. The trunk you found, there are things in it that could change everything. And I fear," she faltered, swallowing hard. "I fear it's not just memories that are buried in there." "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, a part of me desperate for clarity while another part screamed for a retreat back into the safety of ignorance. "Your family, there are connections, histories that run far deeper than any of you realize. Secrets that have lingered longer than even this house has stood." She sought my eyes, and for a moment, the weight of her words wrapped around us like an ominous cloak. "You're in danger?" "Danger?" I echoed, incredulity mixing with fear. My instincts had always warned me of the shadows lurking within these walls, but hearing it spoken aloud made it all too real. "From what? Or whom? The past has a way of catching up," she responded, and in the tremble of her voice, I found an unsettling resonance with my mother's earlier anxieties. Behind me, my mother shifted anxiously, her hands twining tightly together as her breath became shallow. My father, steadfast and protective, moved closer to my mother, his expression unreadable. There was a storm brewing in all of us, and I wondered which way the winds would blow. Tell us. Please, I pressed, needing to anchor ourselves to something tangible amidst the chaos. Mrs. Adler hesitated for a moment, then looked deeply into my eyes. The trunk contains more than just your family's belongings. It holds truths that some people would go to great lengths to destroy or keep hidden. She paused, eyes narrowing into a glare of desperation. There are dark forces at play, and they're not far behind. The past, she continued, her voice heavy with a sorrow that seeped into my veins, is not always just about memories. It can be a weapon, or it can be a shield. There are people who would want to use it against you. My mother finally spoke, her voice trembling. What are you saying, Mrs. Adler? Who would do this? Why? Mrs. Adler opened her mouth as if to respond, but a sudden crash outside the window interrupted her, causing all of us to flinch. I edged closer to the curtains, peering out into the fading light. Shadows danced at the edges of the yard, branches swayed menacingly, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary, at least not until I caught sight of a figure there. Hidden behind the gnarly old oak tree were two men dressed in dark clothing, their postures tense and watchful. I blinked, heart racing. I hadn't seen them before. My breath caught as their eyes seemed fixed on our home, on us. Fear gripped my chest like a vice. Who are they? I whispered, turning back to Mrs. Adler. The flicker of panic crossed her face as she glanced out the window before facing us again. You need to leave. Now. They can't know you've uncovered the trunk. There was a pleading intensity in her Gaussian urgency that felt like a lifeline thrown at a sinking ship. My father's iron facade cracked ever so slightly. We can't just run, he said, voice strained. We need answers and we need to protect our family. But as I watched the men shift, muscles tensed and coiled, the decision felt even more precarious. The secrets buried within that trunk began to feel like a ticking bomb, and time was slipping through our fingers. The last semblance of control seemed to vanish as another tremor coursed through the ground, shaking the foundations beneath our feet. Then find the answers together, I murmured, though inside I was unsure whether I was leading us into salvation or deeper into a dark abyss. But first, we need to figure out who those men are. If they're dangerous, then the trunk will mean nothing if it all ends here. Just as I voiced my thoughts, the door rattled violently, and a firm knock echoed through the house, followed by a voice I recognized too well, a voice that chilled me to the bone. Open up. We know you're in there. Time to settle some debts. My heart raced, racing ahead of the reality that crashed into our midst. With every second that ticked away, the walls seemed to close in, and I realized we no longer had the luxury of hesitating. The secrets of our past were demanding to be dealt with, and they wouldn't wait for us to be ready. The rattle of the doorknob sent jolts of panic through me, stronger than the tremors that had quaked beneath our feet moments before. The world outside that evening was transforming into something sinister, with the two men in the yard now peeking in through the thin slats of the curtain, their expressions an unsettling mix of determination and menace. Emma, listen to me. Mrs. Adler's voice cut through the cacophony of my fears, forcing me to focus on her steady gaze. I'll explain everything, but you need to trust me. This is not the time for questions, only action. I nodded, desperation overtaking my need for answers. My father's jaw was clenched, his protective instincts flaring. No, he said quietly, but firmly. We stay put. They want something. And if we run, they win. Your father is right, Mrs. Adler reinforced, casting a knowing glance at my father before turning her intense focus back on me. But they can't find out what you've discovered. The trunk is key, it's a beacon for those who want to keep these truths buried. Before I could respond, the knock came again, harsher this time, splintering the thin veil of stoic bravery we had tried to uphold. Open up. We know you're in there. Time to settle some debts. The voice was smooth yet edged with a darkness that slid beneath my skin like ice. Another voice, dissonant and deep, joined the first. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Just hand over what you found, and we can walk away. You don't want this to get messy. I swallowed, gripped by an urgency to act, but fear numbed my limbs. My father stepped over to the hallway table and grabbed a heavy metal object, a candle holder, a stance becoming unwavering, a shield for our family against the unknown. Emma, go to the back door. He issued the command to me with a quiet confidence I clung to like a lifeline. You and your mother need to get out of here. Panic surged within me. What about you? Just go. His tone brooked no argument, and I felt the sting of tears welling up as the reality of the situation clawed at my heart. In one final desperate measure, Mrs. Adler rushed toward me, grasping my shoulders with surprising strength. One thing, Emma. Whatever comes next, don't lose faith. There are good people in this world, people who will help you. I could see in her eyes that she was trying to be my anchor, but the uncertainty of everything had begun to erode my resolve. A loud crash sounded, the door splintering under the force of a heavy shoulder. I stumbled back, instinctively pulling my mother closer. Now! My father yelled, thrusting the candle holder forward in a defensive posture. We bolted toward the back of the house, the sounds of intruders breaking through the threshold resonating in the air, a reminder of how flimsy the sanctity of our home had become. I reached the back door just as it swung wide, my heart screaming at the sight of the shadowy figures approaching through the dim light, their silhouettes distorting in the glow of the fading sun. In a moment of sheer adrenaline, I pushed my mother through the door into the backyard. The air was heavy, laced with impending dread, yet a flicker of hope ignited the depths of my uncertainty. A nearby shed beckoned like a hidden refuge. Quick, over there! I urged, tugging my mother towards it, my instinct overriding the sounds of chaos erupting behind us. As I glanced back, fear paralyzed me momentarily. My father stood resolute, a bulwark against the encroaching darkness, shouting commands. I could feel the urgency of the moment accentuate each breath, each heartbeat that thundered through my chest. Just as we reached the shed, a loud crash shattered the air, followed by a voice that both terrified and called out a name I hadn't heard in years. I know you're here, Emma. Don't you remember me? My heart dropped as I turned slowly to face the intruder emerging from the doorway, his face half hidden in shadows but unmistakable. It was not one of the men who'd threatened us, but rather someone from the pasta face I'd thought I'd never see again, someone whose reappearance could echo the specters of memory. Michael? I whispered, incredulity mixing with a tide of emotions that washed over me: fear, confusion, and a flickering hint of warmth that clashed fiercely with the fear encroaching upon us. Why was he here? What did he want from my family, from me? The moment hung precariously, the air thickening with old memories that threatened to consume me whole as reality pulsated with danger and unspoken secrets waiting to be revealed. The shed was dark and heavy with the scent of damp wood and rust, a stark contrast to the world of chaos erupting just outside its confines. My mother gripped my arm tightly, her eyes searching mine for answers while my own heart raced at the unexpected sight of Michael. Why had he come back? Emma, please, he implored softly, his voice laced with urgency, we don't have much time. He stepped closer, the shadows casting a melancholy aura over his features. I could barely process the confusion raging inside me. Michael had been a memory one I thought had been buried under time and hurt. Why are you here? I managed to ask, my voice a shaky whisper. They found out, he said, glancing anxiously toward the door. They're looking for you for the trunk. I'm here to help you. A flicker of hope surged within me, but it was quickly snuffed out by the weight of the danger looming around us. Help me? You disappeared for 5 years, Michael. How can I trust you now? I know I let you down, but I had no choice. I didn't want this for you. I've regretted leaving ever since. There was desperation etched on his features. You don't understand the consequences that come with what you found. My fingers suddenly gripped the edges of the shed door. I had so many questions, so many fears, but another crash echoed from our house, drawing my attention further into the impending storm. My father was still fighting, still standing guard against the encroaching danger. I could feel my chest tightening, the prospect of losing him overwhelming my senses. Michael, where is my father? I asked, panic lacing my tone. He's stalling them, but we need to move, Emma. They won't stop until they find the information in that trunk. He stepped closer, an intensity in his gaze that felt strangely familiar. If we don't act now, we may never have a chance again. What do you know? I pushed, my voice rising slightly, reflection swirling around angry memories and neglected trust. I know secrets, Emma. About your family, about the trunk and its power. But this isn't just about you, it's about so much more. People will get hurt, he said with urgency, and I can't let that happen to you. I hesitated, the weight of his words pressing against the barricade of my heart. Why are you doing this, Michael? After all this time? Because I care about you, he replied, his voice low, earnest. I always have. Just as he uttered those words, the door to the shed rattled violently, making us both jump. They're coming. My mother whispered, fear flooding her eyes. Now. Michael urged, breaking the last barrier of hesitation within me. I darted outside, pulling my mother with me, even as a fresh wave of panic slashed through me at the thought of abandoning my father. Where now? I cried, looking desperately around the yard, scanning for any possible escape as shadows loomed closer behind us. Follow me. Michael shouted, gesturing toward a narrow trail that snaked into the thicket bordering the yard. The moonlight glinted ominously off the surfaces, illuminating facets of this new reality, each step a betrayal of the safety I once had. As we moved, gripping the branches and roots like lifelines, I could hear the shouts and rumbles from the house, my heart a prisoner in my chest. My father's image bubbled to the surface of my mind, an anchor as I fought the urge to turn back. Something in Michael's eyes flickered with mischief or maybe desperation. It was hard to tell through the haze of confusion I felt towards him. Emma, there are things about your family that you're not ready to hear, but if we survive this, you'll need to know, he said between hurried breaths. What things? I pressed, desperation clawing at the edges of my resolve. Before he could answer, a loud crack echoed from behind us, followed by a shout. I stumbled forward, heart racing, and a fleeting fear gripped me. What was that? I gasped, instinctively tightening my grip on my mother's hand. Michael's expression twisted with a blend of urgency and fear. I'll explain everything later, but we can't stop. Not now. And just as I accepted the uncertainty of fleeing into the night, the forest came alive with a horrifying realization, a possibility that shattered whatever tranquility remained in my soul. What if we weren't alone? As we plunged deeper into the woods, the branches snagging at my clothes and pulling me back, I sensed something dark lurking in the shadows behind us, watching, waiting. My heart pounded in my chest louder than ever. A haunting echo called out, and dread unfurled inside me. Michael, what if they're tracking us? Stay close to me, he instructed, urgency spilling from his lips. In that moment, I felt the betrayal and the hope intertwining, a delicate balance resting heavily on my shoulders. As I forged ahead, propelled by a cocktail of fear and uncertainty, the shadows danced around us, whispering secrets and threats. Then, without warning, I felt a sharp tug on my wrist, pulling me back into the dark. A voice slithered through the air, low and menacing. We know where you are, Emma. You can't escape this. My breath caught in my throat, and the light of the moon dimmed around us, the branches closing in like the hands of fate. With one last glance back at Michael, filled with uncertainty and trepidation, I realized that no matter the path we chose, nothing would ever be the same. As the urgency wormed its way into my chest, I once again felt the cold press of the past against me, a haunting reminder that the deeper I hid, the more tangled my reality became. My heart left the safety of the shed, pushing me forward into the inky shadows of the forest, where secrets bloomed like poisoned flowers waiting to unveil their truths. As I ran with Michael and my mother, fragments from the many years I had tried to escape spiraled around me like flurries of leaves caught in a whirlwind. I could hear nothing beyond the thudding of my heartbeat mingling with the fading chaos behind the distant shouts of my father and the crashing of our once sturdy home shattered into uncertainty. Through here, Michael urged, pulling us onto a narrow path cloaked by dense thickets. The moonlight guided our way as if it, too, wished to unveil whatever lay hidden. The urgency of our flight pressed down on me like a weight I could hardly bear. Our breaths came out sharp, each gasp a testament to all I had lost and all I stood to protect. Where are we going? I managed to ask, desperation pouring out through every word as I grappled with my tumultuous emotions. What about my father? He's still your father's going to be fine, Michael interrupted, though his voice quivered with uncertainty. We need to regroup and figure out our next move. Trust me, Emma. He would want you to be safe first. The angle of his words felt foreign, belied by the history we shared, a history intertwined with a painful longing left unresolved. Years melted away in that moment. It was as if time had spun back, teasing the remnants of the love that tangled between us, even as danger loomed ever closer. Trust you? I echoed, the bitterness gripping my throat. You're the reason everything fell apart in the first place. You went away, and I was left to face the wreckage alone. Emma, please, he implored, desperation flickering in his eyes. I made mistakes, grave ones, and I regret leaving you. But we don't have time for this. They're coming, and whatever is in that trunk, it connects us all. They know that. We need to find out the truth before it crushes you. A shadow hung heavy between us, but before I could respond, another crash rang through the trees, prompting Michael to pull me onward. The sound echoed ominously like footsteps marching ever closer to reality and ruin. A primal instinct kicked in, driving me through the dark, anchored to the hope that by uncovering secrets, we could reclaim our family's fractured legacy. I let the echoes guide us until we stumbled onto a small clearing where the moonlight broke in silver streaks through the treetops. There, amid whispers of uncertainty and dread, something flickered against the ground, a forgotten object peeking through the underbrush. My heart leaped as I knelt, brushing away dirt to reveal a locket nestled in the tangled roots. I opened it, my breath catching as two photographs stared back at me, mother and father, with a radiance I'd never known. A time before the fractures carved into their hearts, a fresh reminder of love untainted by fears. Where did this come from? I whispered, turning it in my palm as if it were fragile glass. It was my mother's, Michael said abruptly. A tremor surfaced in his voice, stirring the depth of past resentments. She was hiding it when she spoke of the trunk. It holds more than just sadness. These pictures, truths worth fighting for. I looked up, hearing a vulnerability in his words that tugged at the strings of unfinished chords between us. Just then, an unyielding voice echoed from the edge of the clearing. The shadowy figures from the yard had found us, their silhouettes growing bolder as they stepped into the moonlight. There she is. We've been looking everywhere. The menacing tone sent chills racing down my spine. Transfixed in that moment of turmoil, I fought against the instinct to run. Emma. Michael. One of them called, stepping forward, a predatory gleam in his eye. You think you can just run? We know why you're looking for that trunk. Hand it over, and we can just forget this ever happened. Like hell, we will. Michael shouted defiantly, radiating strength amidst the encroaching danger. In that instant, fighting for what we had gained and lost bound us forward. The love wrapped around us pulsed for survival. The men laughed, a hollow sound that reverberated through the air as they advanced menacingly. My chest constricted. Fear clawed through my veins as I turned, wanting to scream for my father but unable to utter a word. The cold reality struck hard that there would be no escape, no hiding from the chaos that danced closer. It felt as if the very shadows themselves lusted for our downfall. Just as I felt the tide of hopelessness swell, a flash of movement caught my eye, a figure flying through the darkened woods, unrelenting and fierce. What are you waiting for? A familiar voice boomed as the figure boldly emerged into the clearing, the unmistakable form of my father. The men stopped, momentarily taken aback as he stood resolute, the well-worn metal candle holder clutched tightly in his hands, the very embodiment of strength and love. Step away from my daughter. He bellowed, voice unwavering despite the threat spiraling around us. Dad, don't. I cried, fear surging through me, knowing that he was willing to protect us at any cost, but I could see the determination burning fiercely in his eyes. If they want you, they'll have to go through me first. Whatever secrets threaten our unity end here. Suddenly, the wind howled, and the world spun into chaos as shadows blurred, emerged, and receded. My family, my heart, collided in the intensity of the moment in ways I had never fathomed. The fragile ties of trust bound us there, not only in the face of danger but toward the light of familiarity, yearning to reconnect. What's it going to be? We can't let the past dictate our future any longer. I retorted, my voice pushing against the echoing doubts that clouded my heart. The cold stare of defeat in the men's eyes waned, ambition flickering into uncertainty amid the burgeoning strength of our family bond. "I thought you'd run away again," Michael said quietly, fear entwining with hope as he stepped closer to my father while keeping one eye on the approaching figures. "But you're not running anymore." "None of us are running," my father affirmed. In that moment of unity forged in the fire of resilience, something awakened within me. Wisps of forgotten laughter, shadows of long-lost joy emerged, challenging the darkness threatening to consume our lives. The men appeared uncertain now, glancing nervously amongst each other as my father's defiance grew bolder. I could feel the wind shifting, destiny calling us outward. "Now. We move together," my father commanded, taking my hand and Michael's, joining our souls in defiance against the storms that had haunted us, and just like that, we surged forward, fists raised. Standing together against the looming past, though shadows chased behind us, our hearts ignited with the flame of something boundless, hope and love amid the chaos. The truth would be ours to uncover, the past cracking open like weathered earth to nurture the life that awaited us. For as the shadows advanced, we became more than just fragments of memories. We became familiar force unified by the light that flickered just beyond the horizon. As we thrust back, those strong and fierce voices filled my heart, reminding me that every nuance of our shared existence forged new possibilities in the realm of tenderness we could one day embrace. And just as we forged ahead, racing toward the light, I knew we would find a way to make sense of the mess equipped with truth, woven into the fabric of our hearts as one. Finally, as the clearing fell behind us and the shadows faded into the edges of the night, one potent thought echoed within me, igniting possibility with every heartbeat. It was never too late for us, our story could start anew. And as the dawn kissed the edge of the horizon, embracing every wound, I whispered to the universe, "Together, we will rise."